In tonight's headlines, the city's first batch of light public housing will be open for applications starting June 24th. In wake of the power outage in Wong Tai Sin last night, the government demands CLP Power to fund independent investigation against power supply incidents in the last 3 years. And the Federal Reserve keeps its key lending rates steady, but signals that there will only be one rate cut this year.
Starting from the 24th of this month, applications will be accepted for the first batch of light public housing units. These public housing units are located in Yuen and Ngau, with a total of over 4,400 units expected to be moved into in the first half of next year. The rents will be 10% lower than public housing in the same districts, ranging from $740 to $2,650. Around 85,000 applicants who have been on a public housing waiting list for 3 years or longer will gradually receive application forms from the Housing Authority. Applications submitted between the 24th of this month and the 15th of next month will be given priority. The allocation of units will be based on a point-based system, with additional points given based on the applicant's family situation and the districts they choose to live in. If applicants only select new territories and extended areas projects, they will receive an additional 30 points. If they select both urban areas and new territories and extended areas, they will only receive an additional 15 points. Director of Housing Winnie Ho stated that the deployment of point system is not due to concerns about slow sales of new territories projects, but rather to encourage applicants to choose projects in the new territories and extended urban areas. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News. Part of the densely populated Wong Tai Sin district suffered a power outage last night, leaving more than 2,250 households in Longguang House, Lower Wong Tai Sin Estate, Meitak House in Meitong Estate, and a private residential estate in a total blackout for more than 4 hours. Electricity provider CLP Power said the power outage started at around 8 p.m. due to an 11,000-volt cable failure. Temple Mall and residential buildings nearby plunged into complete darkness. Residents need to walk downstairs to get out of the dark and the heat. During the power outage, firefighters received at least 5 reports of people trapped in lifts. The electricity came back around midnight and residents went home. The government expressed concern about the outage and urged the power company to expedite the repairs. Under the newly imposed penalty scheme for power outages and taking into account the hours and population affected, the estimated total power outage time was around 500,000 minutes, much less than the compensation threshold, which is 15 million minutes. So compensation from the Electricity Power CLP Group is not mandatory. But lawmaker Edward Lau thinks differently. Lau said, given the number of people affected, it is not reasonable that no compensations would be made by the utility. The government should reconsider the policy like adding more tiers of major power failures. The electricity provider should also consider sending residents vouchers to express apologies. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News. Environmental Chief Tse Chin-wan expressed concerns over the power outage incident in Wong Tai Sin and has met with the head of the electricity provider CLP Power. Tse demanded CLP to provide funds for the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department to hire an independent consultant to conduct a review of all power dip and supply interruption incidents over the past 3 years, as well as the improvement measures taken. And the consultant will carry out a comprehensive review of the safety design of the power supply system. Tse said that CLP has experienced multiple recent incidents with a frequency that is worrying and indicates a decline in service quality. This incident cannot be treated as a rare case. CLP needs to identify the underlying problems in their management system. For this specific incident, the utility must submit a detailed report to the EMSD within 4 weeks. The department will also invite experts and scholars to form a steering group to oversee the work of the independent consultant and provide feedback on the report.
New Zealand holds a traditional ceremony to welcome Chinese Premier Li Qiang on the lawns of Government House. Li is the first Chinese premier to visit this South Pacific nation since 2017. New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon met with his counterpart, and both sides agreed to initiate negotiations on surface trade negative list. As New Zealand's largest trading partner, Li urged both countries to eliminate non-economic disruption in economic and trade relations. Both leaders also witnessed the signing of various agreements on trade and climate change. Luxon raised a number of issues to Li, including human rights, foreign interference, the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, stating that Wellington will continue to engage predictably and consistently with Beijing, including on issues they disagree with. In the joint news conference, Li called on New Zealand to support Hong Kong in joining the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership (RCEP). The application has been filed in 2022.
中方愿意继续同西方一道，推动RCEP 机制建设和务实合作取得积极的进展，加强在 CPTPP 和 DEPA 等方面的沟通协调。 我们也希望新方支持中国香港加入RCEP。
Li is visiting New Zealand for 3 days, including a stop at Auckland, before heading to Australia and Malaysia. Anna Chan, Cable News. Argentine riot police fired rubber bullets to disperse protesters who threw stones and Molotov cocktails outside the Congress in the capital city of Buenos Aires. Local media described the scene as a battlefield. Water cannon was sprayed on the crowds. Scuffles broke out when protesters tried to make their way towards Congress. Dozens of demonstrators and police officers were reported injured. Thousands gathered on Wednesday to protest against the reform package proposed by right-wing President Javier Milei to revive the country's flagging economy. It includes declaring a state of economic emergency, cutting pensions and watering down labor rights. The measures are opposed by leftist political parties, labor unions and social organizations, which criticize the disastrous law attacks all workers in the country. After the clashes, the Senate narrowly approved the overhaul bill, with Vice President and head of the Senate cast a tie-breaking vote in favor of Milei's agenda. Full approval is expected on Thursday, and the 328-article bill will then return to the lower house for the final go-ahead. If it gets the green light, it will be Milei's first legislative win since entering office last December. He has been relying on executive powers to slash state spending and sweep away economic restrictions. Milei rose to power on promises he would resolve Argentina's worst economic crisis in 2 decades. But his political party of relative novices holds just a tiny minority of seats in Congress, and he has struggled to strike deals with the opposition. Anna Chan, Cable News.
The Federal Reserve kept its key interest rate unchanged again after a 2-day meeting as expected, and scaled back its forecast from 3 rate cuts to just 1 this year, as inflation has yet cooled down enough. The rate was kept at around 5.25 to 5.5%, the highest since 2001. It was the 7th time the U.S. Central Bank kept the rate steady, But policymakers now see only one rate cut in 2024, according to their median estimate. Officials now estimate they'll lower the federal funds rate by 0.25 percentage point to a range of 5% to 5.25% by year's end. That's equivalent to 1/4 point cut, fewer than the 3 decreases they projected in March. A few hours before the Fed announced its decision, the latest inflation data was released, which shows that Consumer Price Index, or CPI, held flat in May, which is lower than expectations. Fed Chief Jerome Powell said they have made progress controlling inflation, but not fast enough to lower the rates.
Appropriate level of confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably to 2%, or alternatively, do we see really unexpected signs of weakness in the labor market that would call for a response, which is another thing that could happen. But again, we don't see that, and we see today's report as progress and as building confidence, but we don't see ourselves as having the confidence that would warrant beginning to loosen policy at this time.
Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
Artificial intelligence drug researcher Quantum Farm debuted for trading today and became the first specialist technology firm to go public in the city's main board under a new regime for pre-revenue specialist tech firms introduced more than a year ago. The new regime, Chapter 18C, which was added to the main board listing rules last March, allows specialist tech firms yet to record any revenue to list on the main board. Financial Secretary Paul Chen said the 18C system has fully taken into account the special needs of hard and core technology companies, as they have different needs at different stages of development. Some of them have realized revenue while some have not. We can provide them with access to finance so that their innovative ideas can come true, Chen says. Meanwhile, the chief of the board expressed confidence in the city in becoming the destination for new economy companies.
Those reforms changed the DNA of our markets, transforming Hong Kong into one of the world's leading venues for new economy and biotech companies. Since 2018, over 300 new economy companies have listed with us, raising around 950 billion Hong Kong dollars. But we didn't stop. We saw what we could achieve when market listing frameworks are properly constructed to reflect long-term macro business and investor trends.